Hey there, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ryan. I thought today I'd do something a little different and talk about a race that I had done. Since I can't do videos of races, I haven't been able to do any races since February. Uh, and I kind of wanted to talk about some different races I'd done, my experiences and everything. So I thought I'd start with what was my first my first ever full marathon, which was in Lake Placid, New York. And anyone not from upstate New York or the Northeast area, Lake Placid is in the northern part of the state of New York, in the Adirondack Mountains. Two separate Olympic Games have taken place there, of course, both winter games. And it's a very beautiful area, very wooded. You've got Mirror Lake, and then, of course, the big Lake Placid that the town is named after up there. So, and I know I've talked about doing this race in a couple other of my videos, so I thought I might as well actually give like a full explanation of the race, the course, my experience with it, etc. So, basically, for those that watched my Challenge Yourself video and my video about books to read, I read Running the Edge in January of 2018, and when I finished, I kind of took it to, because one of the things that Tim and Adam talked about in that was challenging yourself to do something different, and they used the example, of course, of running a full marathon if you'd never done it before. Now, the thing with me was, at that point, I had run, I'd run 2 Boilermakers, which were 15Ks, and I had run a 10-miler, a couple 5Ks, and quite a few half marathons at that point. So, and people would ask me, oh, are you going to run New York City? Are you going to run Boston, etc.? And I was like, no. I don't really have interest in 26 miles of nonstop movement. That does not interest me at all. So, especially my guitar teacher, he'd always kind of pick on me like, well, you've done how many half marathons now? Sometime you're going to come in and say, hey, I signed up for a full marathon. Then I kept, no, I won't do that. I have no interest in going that far. 13 miles is my limit. But a few months prior to reading Running the Edge, I had signed up for the local Heart Run. And, well, actually, even further back, I had signed up for my first Run Disney weekend doing the Dark Side Challenge in Disney World in Florida, where I'd be running 19.3 miles over the course of 2 days, doing a 10K on Saturday and a half marathon on Sunday. So, I'd done some reading, done some research about getting prepared for that, and one of the things that I kept kind of coming across was people saying, hey, you should run a longer distance than you're accustomed to before that weekend. I say it that way because most of the time they were saying run a full marathon before you do your 2-race weekend. Their reasoning behind that was so that you could see what the effect of that sort of mileage would do on your body. I did not, like I said, I had no interest in doing a full marathon. So, what I ended up doing was, uh, there's a local heart run that happens in March, in Utica, New York, and you can do, the mile walk, the 5K walk, 5K run, 10K run, 10-mile run. I think there's a 15K run in there, maybe. I don't know. Or you can do the 30K run, which, if you don't know, a 30 kilometer is equivalent to 18.6 miles. So I signed up to do that distance for the heart run because it's close enough to 19.3. I should be able to do that in preparation for doing the 10K and the half in Florida. So I read Running the Edge, get inspired, and my mom's sister-in-law has actually competed at that point in only a couple of Ironman competitions. Now she's done quite a few since then. But I remember after doing my first half marathon, she said, "You gonna do a triathlon with me?" And I looked into it and I was like, I don't bike. And there's just something kind of disturbing to me about saying, "Hey, that body of water there, jump in and swim 2 miles." No thank you. I'll get in the pool. I'll do a pool swim. I used to love doing pool laps, but no way am I getting in a lake and swimming out and back 2 miles, or getting out in the ocean especially. So I thought of her and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking of signing up for a full marathon, specifically in Lake Placid." She lives in Plattsburgh, which is right nearby Lake Placid. So I said, "I'm thinking I'm going to sign up for the full marathon for Lake Placid. Would you do it with me so that I know there's someone else on the course with me that's also out of their mind?" And she said, "Sure." So get preparing for that. Well, preparing. My preparation was running the heart run and then running in Disney, and then 2 months later running in Lake Placid. So the kind of the long and short of lead up to Lake Placid, I ran the 18.6, the 30K heart run in March, and it's the first weekend in March, like March 3rd, 4th, in there. And it just so happened that year that we had a really nasty snowstorm. Like the day before. Luckily, I had gone and gotten my packet that Thursday. It was a Saturday, the race. So I had gone up, gotten my packet on Thursday, and then Friday, woke up. I work at a school, and got the notification that school's closed, nasty storm. And I look out the window like, really? Okay, whatever. Didn't seem to be anything going on. So I went back to bed. Woke up at 10, I think. Or I was doing stuff around the house at like 10 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden the power went out. Power did not come back on until Saturday at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So there was a lot of chaos with that because figuring out how to get the garage door open, etc., making sure that I had everything charged, because I needed my headphones, I needed my Fitbit, I needed my phone especially, just in case I needed to call anyone, like, hey, I'm stuck, come get me at the college, whatever. And a means of making sure that I woke up. Which, of course, didn't matter, because the whole night I was like, I'm not going to wake up. I don't think I'm going to wake up. I don't think I'm going to wake up. And then didn't sleep at all before running 18.6 miles in freezing cold weather with very poorly cleaned roads. Going downhill. It was not the best experience at all. It was nice raising the money for, the Heart Association and all that. My dad died of a heart attack, so that was good, but the experience of the race itself was not much fun. Fast forward a month and a half-ish, and I'm in Florida, and first thing they say at the start line at 5:30 in the morning is, hey, by the way, you Northeasterners, if you're planning on running, like, really fast, like you normally have been doing back home, don't, because you might have heat stroke. Or some such thing, because it was so hot and humid. Like, exceptionally for Florida in the middle of April. And, of course, back home, it was cold and snowy, as per the Heart Run situation. So, that made for an interesting first time running out of the state, but I did it, and that was a lot of fun, but yeah, I was pretty warm and sweaty a lot of the time for that. Month of May rolls around, I do a 10-mile in Syracuse, called the Mountain Goat, and obviously it's called Mountain Goat because you're up and down hills. But I did that in an hour 24, so I thought, that's pretty good for considering my last Boilermaker was like an hour 21 or something, and it was 0.7 miles farther, and I had more hills to deal with. So I thought, this is good preparation for Lake Placid. Because, of course, Lake Placid, you're up in the Adirondacks, so it's hilly. And my boss at the school, she told me that she had done the half marathon there, and she said to be careful because the finish line is at the Lake Placid High School, and it's all uphill for like the last mile. So I was like, okay, that's good to know. So did a half marathon in Utica that was entirely flat. Got a PR doing that. The next week went to Cooperstown, New York, ran a 10K at the Baseball Hall of Fame. Got to run around Doubleday Field for warm-up. Didn't do that great because I was dealing with a cold that weekend. The start of a cold, I think, or no, it had kind of started around the half marathon, and then it was like in full force during the 10K. Weekend after that, I ran a 5K right here in town, still dealing with the cold. I do not advise running with a cold. It's just not good. Don't do it unless you're, like, desperate to do it, and even then, try to rethink it somehow. Do something to try your best to get rid of it as quickly as you can, but the whole point was, it was my 30th birthday month, so I wanted to kind of go all out, so I did all these crazy races, culminating in a week after the 5K doing the full marathon in Lake Placid. So, that weekend, we drive up. My family walk around Mirror Lake for the afternoon. Kind of get a lay of the land, although we were going counterclockwise where I was going to be going around it clockwise. Beautiful area. I highly recommend going there. I recommend doing a race there if you so desire, so long as you have trained for a half or a full and trained for a lot of hills, because I'm getting into that. So, morning of the race. Coolest thing about the race is the fact that you are starting out, like, you get to warm up. You got the track there in front of the high school. The track is the former speed skating oval from the Winter Olympics. I warmed up running around that a few times, like I did Doubleday when I did the 10K at the Baseball Hall of Fame. That is kind of mind-blowing. I've had a few other kind of mind-blowing experiences with my running that I'll talk about in other videos, but that was the second one. The first one was Doubleday. But I've never been much of a baseball fan, so I've always been more the Olympics and skating and hockey and all that, so the oval was the bigger deal for me. But anyway, so I got to do that. So if you do this, you get to warm up on that oval, which is pretty cool if you're sports enthusiast. So you start just outside of the oval when they say go, and when we were there, we had a French-Canadian guy as well doing the French announcements, because you're close enough to the border up there that I think some people come down from like Ontario and Quebec to participate in some of these things that happen at Lake Placid. Like my mom's sister-in-law had actually done the Lake Placid Ironman once before, and she told me that the course that she did for the Ironman was the same course that we were doing for the full marathon. That portion of the Ironman, I should say. So, start out, you're going up around Mirror Lake, and you're seeing all these houses, and you know, people are coming down from their lake houses to cheer you on, wave good morning, etc. There's actually one photo of me that's kind of entertaining because I look so shocked and almost like freaked out. And I call it was that a bear just now in the woods? Because one of the best things about the Lake Placid races were the mile markers. I've not really seen many mile markers that are entertaining at races. The most entertaining are like the Run Disney, because you've got like characters that go along with the theme of the race, or Rock and Roll, because the Rock and Roll race series, they've got music pumping out of the markers. But most of the time it's just mile 2, mile 3. Lake Placid did it so that you had mile X and then a funny little saying. The one downside is, yeah, for the full marathon runners. I'll get further into the course makeup in a second. But the one downfall for the full marathon runners is the fact that you end up seeing quite a few of the markers a few times. So some of them, like if one of them really tickles you, you'll see it again, and it may or may not hit you the same way. Or you may end up going, that joke again. Fortunately for me, my favorite one was mile 18, Serenity Now, because I'm a huge Seinfeld fan, so immediately I'm picturing George's father screaming, "Serenity Now!" And then that guy that George didn't like turning and saying, "You better tell your father to stop saying that, because it's serenity now, insanity later." So the second time around, I actually stopped, took a picture on my phone, got on Facebook and wrote "Serenity Now, Insanity Later" as a caption and sent it out there during the race, because I needed a break at 18 miles. So anyway, part of the problem with Lake Placid for if you're doing the full marathon is that it's an out and back, back out, and back. If you're doing the half, it's an out and back, period. You go out, you hit a spot that's not nearly as far as the full marathoners, turn around, come back into town, finish at the speed skating oval in front of the high school, you're done. Full marathoners, you head out, you go way beyond where they have the half marathoners turn around. To the point where it was actually this race was the reason why when I was given the option for a new phone, I'm like, I want a phone with a lot of memory so I can download my music, because I was just using my iTunes iCloud, and I'd get to a section and all of a sudden the music would start cutting out, and then I'd have absolutely nothing for like a mile of running before I got to come back. And finally, the music would come back on, but when music is your driving force, that's kind of a tough thing to deal with. But anyway, so you get out, and then you come back, you get almost back to town. And then they say, "Oh, go back, do it over again." One of the cool things along the course is you've got the ski jumps. One of the bad things you have about the course is you've got the ski jumps. I say this because the first time you see them, it's like, man, that's amazing. Those look awesome. That's incredible. And then you turn around and come back again and like, man, that's still so incredible. Then you come back again and you're starting to get sick of the ski jumps, because it's almost like they're taunting you. Like, yeah, you're going to see us one more time before you're done. And you're going to be in a lot of pain, possibly. Very tired. And wanting this all to end, because you'll be at like 20-something miles at that point. So, and of course, that's the thought that enters your head. Or when you see them the last time, there are possibly many things you can be thinking when you see them the last time. One of which I'm not going to repeat, because I don't want to label this so that kids can't watch. So, yeah. But they are impressive. It's a really cool thing to see. It's just, you go by them so many times during the full marathon, it's a bit like, okay. But see, I got thinking about this in preparation for this video. Part of the problem with races is you have to take into consideration shutting down roads. So you have to contact local law enforcement, have local permits. You have to have state, possibly, depending on what roads you end up using, so that they can say, hey, this road is closed from here to here during this time period. So from that aspect, I can understand why they do out and back and back and back, because otherwise they'd have to shut down a longer section of road, and that could cost them more money, and most likely, I mean, I'm sure this is kind of a smaller, it's not like, New York City Marathon or Boston Marathon or anything like that, where it's this big, huge thing that a lot of people pay a lot of money for. I think there were maybe 1,000, possibly 2,000 people or so. I'd have to look, doing both the half and the full. Whereas, like, New York City has like 100,000 people. Boston gets like 14,000 people. Even Boilermaker that's in Utica, New York gets like 14,000 people. So they get a lot of money that then they can use for their nonprofits, and then also use for hiring law enforcement, having volunteers, shutting down roads, etc., etc. So I can understand why they have to set it up that way. And for all I know, because each year race courses can sometimes end up changing for varying reasons. For instance, it could be, oh, actually, that wasn't 26.2, that was 26.3, or that was 26.15, or something like that, where they thought they had measured everything perfectly fine, but that wasn't quite right, or there are things in the way, so they have to kind of shift where the course goes, sort of thing. So, anyway. But the big thing with Lake Placid is there's hills. You're in the Adirondacks. You're going up, and like when you start out, you actually start out going uphill because you're going up and around Mirror Lake, which is upwards. After you get to a certain point, then you're coming back downhill, and then you go downhill pretty much out of town, and then you're pretty flat after that. But then, as I said, you have to turn around and come back, so then you end up going back uphill. Then you go back downhill if you're doing the full. If you're doing the half, you just keep going uphill. Doing the full, you go back out, you're back to flat, and then you come back. And you're going back uphill, and it's entirely uphill for like 3 miles, because I think, if I remember correctly, the thing was, I was with my family, and I had said, okay, I should be done in, I think I said like 3.5 or 4 hours or something. Keep in mind, this is a big thing if you're going from doing half marathons to full marathons. They are not the same. Your strategies are totally different if you're doing a half versus a full. Why? You've got an extra 13.1 miles. You need to conserve your energy. That's why I'm not a big fan of doing full marathons. That's why there's only a handful that I want to do. Because generally, I can get to like maybe 15 miles or so, and then I'm like, okay, I want to be done now. I've got very flat feet. They start to hurt, starts to bother my calves, starts to bother my legs, my knees, etc. So 13.1, I'm good. 26.2, I've done it twice. I plan to do it 6 more times. Yeah. But once I'm done with those 6, I'm done with fulls. I don't particularly care for them, and it's because I have a mindset for half marathons. It's hard to break out of that unless you're someone that is like unless you are someone who has a training coach that is like, you need to keep to this kind of pace type of thing. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. If you're going, I've been doing halves, I'm going to do a full, and I'm going to do it in 3.5 hours. If it's your first full, unless you've done an exhaustive amount of training, worked with people like Matt Fitzgerald or Jeff Galloway or someone who has done these things, unless you have someone coaching you, or you're following their training guides, or something, you are not going to finish in 3.5 hours. I almost guarantee it. I say almost because people surprise me sometimes. But I went into that thinking, I'm going to do it in 3.5 hours. Or 4. I wanted to give myself a little thing there. So the plan was, I'd finish in 3.5, 4 hours. We were checked into the hotel, but we had to check out by a certain time. So my plan was, I'd finish by, I forget what time, be able to run up to the hotel, take a shower, get back down, and then have dinner with my mom's sister-in-law, the whole family, and then go home. I was at mile 22 when I was walking, and I could feel myself. I could feel that I was not going to be really running much for the last 4 miles. So I texted my mom. I said, I don't think I'm going to make it back in time. Check out from the hotel, and we'll figure something out. So keep in mind, I felt like I did my half marathon distance in one of the best times I'd ever done. I did my 30K distance in like shaving 10 or 15 minutes or something off my time from March. Because I did that in like 2.5 hours, and I think I did this in like 2 hours and 15 or something, that distance. So I was like, I'm going to do this. This is just amazing. I'm going to do it. And then I hit the wall at mile 22, which is, you do much research with full marathons, and that's pretty much when everyone's like, yeah, your legs don't want to move anymore. No, my legs didn't want to move anymore. So, keep in mind, I still had 4 miles to go, and I had to do quite a bit of that uphill. So, I'm going along, and I think I saw the dreaded ski jumps, and I was like, hey, I think I've got my second win. Now I'm at like 22.5 or something. So I text my mom, I'm like, I think I can do it. Never mind, I think I've got my second win. So she's like, okay, we'll go back to waiting for you. So, going along, I'm running. And then all of a sudden I'm like, nope. There goes the second win. Text her back. Nope, that second win. I think I hit like mile 23 or a little past 23 when I'm like texting her like, nope, never mind, scratch the second win. So I walked for quite a while. Came along a table that had volunteers at it handing out grapes and bananas and whatever. I ended up grabbing some grapes out of a bowl because there was no more volunteers. So I just grabbed a few grapes, popped those. I think they were like apple slices or something. Ate those. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a little better now. So by now I'm at like mile 24. So I'm like, I've got like less than 2.25 miles to go. I can do it. So I start running. I don't really remember a lot. I just remember going through town and then, oh, there's people waving to me that I need to go this way. Okay. Oh, and there's water. I could do with some water. because it's been a while since I've had water because I've been walking so much. So, and they're all, by now I was more in town proper and people were around cheering, where for mile 18 to like 22 or something, you don't really see anyone aside from the few people they have at the water stations. So keep that in mind if you do this, that you need encouragement of your own, not just feeding off of the audience, because there isn't much audience out there. Unless you're in town. So, they're all waving, telling me go this way, so, okay, I'm going that way. So I start going up. Now I'm like, oh, here's the hill up to the high school. Cool. Somehow I managed to pretty much run the remaining like mile and a half or something up that hill. Crested the hill, realized, oh, I'm at the high school. Oh, there's the oval. Oh, there's the finish line. I just need to make it around the oval to the finish line, and I'm done. And I did it. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I did it. And I felt very accomplished for doing it. And that was when I was like, okay, I don't think I'm doing another full marathon ever again. I did one. I can say I did one. I don't need to do any more. Till a few months later when a coworker was like, hey, we've got free entries into the New York City Marathon. Are you interested? Like, well, if I was thinking of doing any, it was going to be the 6 World Majors, which New York City is one of them, so give me that thing, I'm doing it, I guess. So, that's a story for another day, but all in all, the Lake Placid Marathon was a great experience. It was incredibly scenic. Like I said, it's still my favorite race as far as mile markers go. The scenery was phenomenal, but the hills were killer, and seeing the same scenery for the majority of the run is a bit, But like I said, I understand why that is. The other thing I did want to say was, after I got done, we were waiting for my mom's sister-in-law to finish, and I went and got a athletic massage. There was more of a stretch. And while I was in the tent, one of the massage therapists was talking to someone, and I overheard that it was also that person's first ever full marathon. To which she said, oh, they say this is one of the hardest marathons you can ever do. And I'm like, oh good, I chose this to be my first ever marathon, and it is the hardest one to ever do. Awesome. And after doing New York City, which I'll do another video like this for that, I can say that Lake Placid was much harder. New York City is also hard. I went into that way overconfident, but I trained for that one. This one I didn't train that much for. I mean, I did, but it was all me doing my usual training, which is run like 4 miles after work almost every day, and then on the weekend run between 9 or 10 and 13 or so miles. That is not proper marathon training. Everything that I've read since I did my first ever marathon, they say to at least do 1 or 2 long training runs, like 20 plus miles. Granted, don't go from, I ran 10 miles today, I'm going to run 20 this time next week. No, don't do that. You will hurt yourself doing that. But work your way up to it. Do like 10 miles one week, do 11 the next, and then just kind of work your way up to 20 miles. And do at least two 20-mile runs in like the 2 months between when you sign up and when you actually, or not 2 months, like 3 or 4 months. Do at least two 20-mile runs between when you sign up and when you actually run your race. That way your body is more or less prepared because you've got plenty of mileage on your legs. But I didn't do that going into this. All I had was a 30K at the beginning of March and a 10K and a half 2 separate days in the middle of April. And then this was the 10th of June. So, not exactly the best training for a full marathon, let alone first full marathon. But part of the reason I'm explaining all this is so that you kind of learn from my mistake. If you want to do a full marathon, research, get plenty of stuff understood. Don't just go in saying, like I did, like, oh, I can do, half marathons. It's just another half marathon at the same time. No. Two totally different strategies. So, but I'll get into it because I still learned more stuff doing New York City. So that's another video that I'll do maybe next week. So, thank you all for watching. I want to give a shout out to my Patreon, Jen, again. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for subscribing on Patreon. For anyone else interested in my Patreon, the link is in the description. And that's all for now. Until next time, remember, we're in it for the long run. Peace and love.